History tells me that we are a great nation. History told de Tocqueville, and he came over and he tried to figure it out. So he went from town to town and he discovered that America is great because America is good. America is great because America is good. So what exactly does that mean? America is great because America is good. It's the people. The people were good. They were good to each other. They were people of faith, people of hope, people of charity. They did the right thing not because somebody was watching, because it was the right thing. I just finished my last episode on the Fox News Channel 2 days ago. And I have to tell you, I closed the door of the Fox News Channel. And that was the toughest job I've ever had. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of pressure on us all the time to get it right, to zip up your bulletproof vest, to do all the things that we had to do just to keep going. And I closed the door of that office on Thursday, and I walked outside and I got into the car, and I sat back in the car, and I breathed a sigh of relief, and I had a smile, and I thought, God is so good. He is so amazing. 15 years ago, I was a dirtbag. I just completed yet another project where I had every temptation, every opportunity to lie, to cheat, to steal, to do whatever, and every opportunity I and my team tried to do the right thing. And you know what? Nobody will ever read about those things. Nobody will ever really care about those things. I just want to testify to you now that when you get to the end of whatever project it is, and you can say every step of the way, we tried to do the right thing, it grows inside of you. It gives you so much more power as an individual. It gives you so much more joy. It gives you the good part that makes America great. Ben Franklin talked about how we became good, but not before we signed the Declaration of Independence. And before we signed the Declaration of Independence and said, here we are, a bunch of farmers, and we want to take on the greatest navy, the greatest army, the greatest country the world had ever seen, we're going to take them on as farmers. But look out, because we got rakes. How did they do that? Why would they do that? Well, because of an ordinary man. An ordinary man named Thomas Paine. He was a corset maker. He was the guy who kept women probably from sounding like this all the time. Corset maker. That's what he was. Until he realized, you know what? I can write. And so he would make corsets and he would write. And he wrote something called Common Sense. And he said, you know, a lot of these things just make common sense. Shouldn't we be free? Isn't the king kind of oppressing us? Isn't he just taking our money? Common sense tells me he shouldn't do that, and we should be free. The average person began to understand and realize, wait a minute. I believe that too. But I've always thought I couldn't think those things because somebody was over me. I'm just a farmer. What do I know? He said it's common for a reason. That's not a slight or a slam. It was given to us. The framers get together and they say, these things we find self-evident. Common sense. Self-evident. Everybody knows it. As soon as you say it, they know it. Yeah, I should be free. That man was created and endowed with unalienable rights. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. That's the Declaration of Independence. Never before thought of. Nobody ever thought of that before. Nobody ever said that you, a blacksmith, the guy making the really yummy donut burgers, I think he should be king, but that's a different story. Nobody ever thought that he should have a right to say anything. What does he know? So Thomas Paine inspires other ordinary men. One of them is George Washington, an extraordinary man, but only because he stood up not only to Great Britain, but early on to himself, and made sure that he was a man of virtue and merit. George Washington, in the end of his life, said his biggest fear would be that at some point in his life, at the end, he would do something that would eternally dishonor him. At 8 years old, he's writing a list of things to do. Always do these things, never do these things. If you read them and try to apply them to yourself, I'm reading them now and I'm trying to apply them and they're impossible. I mean, I got the no spitting in the fire thing down, but some of them are impossible. One of them is, never cross your legs. When you're seated, seat yourself upright and never cross your legs. Leave your hands folded in your lap. Try that for a day. He did it his whole life. At one point, I made it till about, 12:15. And at one point, I'm having a meeting and I said, I just have to cross my legs. And my staff, who I hadn't told what I'm doing, they said, what are you talking about? I said, I've been trying all day just not cross my legs. I'm trying to do some of the things that George Washington did. That's insane. They said to me, you know what? When we walked in, you felt different. I'm like, yeah, I was in pain. That's what it was. He demanded the highest standard of himself first. And he sucked as a general. He did. For a long time, he stunk on ice. 1776, they declare their independence. Well, now we have to have an army because they're coming. And so we start to fight, and we appoint George Washington to be the general, and he sucks. He loses every single time. We get to New York, which isn't really far from where everything kind of started. We keep losing and losing and losing. Can't lose New York. Now I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know. No, that was wrong. That's a joke George Washington wouldn't have told. But you didn't come to listen to George Washington now, did you? Can't lose New York. So he says, we need a spy. Now, nobody wanted to be a spy, because in the days, if you were a spy, you were hung. Hung like a dog. So he gets together and he says, we need spies. They all say, no, not going to spy. They'll hang you. Not going to be hung. I'll die in battle, but I'm not going to be hung. Nobody does it. Except one ordinary man. He was a school teacher. And that gave him the perfect reason to go across the water and go to Long Island. Because he was a teacher, so he could bring school books. I'm just going to talk to my students. He would spy and see how many men the British had, what the fort looked like, what was going on. He decided to do it, even though he was the captain, and his own unit refused. They tried to talk him out of it. In fact, he had to talk his own unit into staying together the year before. They weren't getting paid. Congress was, well, like Congress is now. And they weren't paying. And so all of his troops in the unit said, we're leaving. He said, no, listen. This is the right thing. This is the right thing to do. Stay. He not only convinced them to stay and fought that battle, he actually paid them with his own salary. He took his pay and divided it up among the men. So when no one volunteered, he stood up and he said, "I'll do it. I'll spy." They turned to him and said, "You can't do that. They'll hang you. You can't die like that. That's dishonorable." He said, if I may quote, "I think I owe to my country the accomplishments of an object so important and so much desired by the commander of her armies, and I know no other mode of obtaining the information. I am fully sensible of the consequence in that situation. But for a year now, I have been attached to the army, and I have not rendered any material service while receiving compensation." Remember, he gave his money to everybody else. But he's saying, I was paid, and I haven't done anything. And George Washington is asking, in the name of our country, "I am not yet influenced by the expectation of promotion. I don't expect any monetary reward. I just want to be useful. And every kind of service necessary for the public good becomes honorable by being necessary." He went on September 18th. He crossed in a boat. He was there for 2 days. He was waiting for the boat to return to pick him up when the British soldiers surrounded him, questioned him, searched him. In his shoes, written in Latin, were all the specs of the fort and everything else that he had spied. They questioned him some more. He wouldn't give them any information. Then they said to him, "We will give you money. We will pay you. We will let you go. All you have to do is go back across, get this piece of information for us, and come back." Now think of this. Maybe this guy's the dumbest guy in the world, but I would have said, "Oh, I'll be right back, guys." He didn't. He was honorable. He said, "I will not spy on my fellow countrymen." So they took him, they tried him, they hung him, and we only know really the part of the story that ends, "I only regret that I have but one life to give for my country." Nathan Hale was his name. Remember who we are. Ordinary men, ordinary women, inspired by ordinary people that get together to do extraordinary things. As we move along from Nathan Hale, that was in September. Remember, the Declaration of Independence was signed in July, today. We were losing so horribly. By September, think how far away this is, that we said we have to spy. The one spy we send out is hung. We lose New York. George Washington, in one of the only scenes that I've ever read about him where he shows real emotion, is standing on the side of New Jersey, and it's burning, New York. And we're retreating. And a tear, kind of like that old television commercial with the Indian or the litter. He's standing there and a tear runs down his cheek. He's lost every battle, and we just lost New York. And he begins to weep. And one of the guys who's under him thinks to himself, "Oh my gosh, the guy is crying now. What do we have, Glenn Beck running this thing?" He then loses Fort Lee, New Jersey. And he's chased down all the way from September until December. He's chased all the way down to the other side, the southern side of the Delaware.